It's now my pleasure to introduce Naomi Klein, who is the author of The Shock Doctrine, to be released next week. Thank you, Andrea. I'm going to be brief, and I'm here to convey a very simple message, as I know all of you are, which is to demand the freedom of Shawn Brant. That's why I'm here, and I know that that's why all of you are here. To demand an end to this charade of treating Shawn like a dangerous, violent criminal. We've just heard this description of these theatrical shows in the courtroom, and Shawn was paraded through that courtroom originally in double shackles. Shawn is not a violent criminal. He's a political criminal. He is a political prisoner. Sorry about that. I had occasion to talk to Shawn a few weeks before June 29th, the event in question. I talked to Shawn, like many people in this room have talked to Shawn, many people in the media, around the campfire at the quarry, the occupied quarry near Natercia. And we were talking about these upcoming demonstrations, which I think it's worth remembering. They were called by the Assembly of First Nations. It was Phil Fontaine's idea to begin with, even though he backed down from the tactics that had originally been proposed, the tactics of the blockade. But what Shawn said to me at the time, and I reported it in an article in the Globe and Mail, talking about the strategy of targeting key infrastructure for a day across the country, highways, trains, power lines, roads. He said it's the same notion as a general strike, which of course is absolutely true. I mean, this thing that is supposed to be so horrifying, that is supposed to justify this criminalization and this treatment of Shawn Brant as a violent criminal, is the very same notion that has been practiced by unions around the world and continues to be practiced by unions around the world. Wildcat economic disruption coordinated when all other means fail. It's not a violent act. It is a pressure point used to disrupt the normal flow of business. And that is what Shawn is being punished for interfering with the economy. But I think if we think about what the reaction would be if police agencies in this country stormed into the homes of union leaders who had organized strikes, whether general strikes or strikes that were considered illegal, which is often the case. The legality of strikes are often contested. I mean, the BC teachers were recently accused of staging an illegal strike. They faced a fine. They faced a fine for shutting down the school system for a while. So there really clearly is a double standard because these tactics that are understood to be a legitimate form of political pressure in a democracy, and in fact are credited with creating much of what we cherish in this country. If we think about the Winnipeg General Strike and the key role that these types of economic disruptions have played in building what is left of our public healthcare system, of all that makes us slightly different from the United States, much as the Harper government and our various governments are trying to dismantle it. It was precisely these types of tactics. So we have to recognize that there is a very radical double standard for First Nations people in this country, that what is considered, or what was considered, a legitimate protest tactic, when First Nations people use those tactics in this country, it is treated as the beginning of some sort of insurgency, and the full force of the Canadian state descends upon them. So what is so threatening about Shawn? I think we all have our theories, but I believe it's because he is a very effective leader. He's an extremely persuasive speaker. The law that he stands accused of breaking is a law that was specifically worded to prevent Shawn's activism. He stands accused of refusing to abide by conditions that told him not to organize, that told him not to use these tactics. That is the reason why we have these images that would be more fitting for a violent criminal. This process was part of a steady, coordinated campaign to take Shawn out of the activist game. And I want to talk a little bit about the disputed, the land at the heart of this struggle. And in the piece that I wrote, I described the quarry as more than a mine, but a metaphor. And it's extremely powerful for those of you who haven't been there to see what is happening on this piece of land, because it is a metaphor for what's happening in hundreds of communities across this country. Where you have land that the courts have actually already recognized as being First Nations land, and all that is left is figuring out the legal details of the settlement. The problem is that that process of figuring out those legal details is designed to take decades. The further problem is that while the negotiations take place, while the legal wrangling takes place, the status quo doesn't hold. The land itself is clear-cut, it is mined. The land itself disappears. And we are in a moment in this country of a rather unprecedented resource boom. Commodity prices and everything from oil to gravel, they're soaring. There is a commodity boom going on that is part of what has been fueling economic growth in recent years. And adding to that, we have the 2010 Olympics in British Columbia, where you have very rapid expansion into pristine areas of wilderness to build ski hills. So you have, on the one hand, the tourism push, and on the other hand, you have the resources push. So while the negotiations are grinding away, and we have this whole apparatus to keep them going, the land disappears. The line isn't held. Every day that goes by is lost. It is lost ground. And at the core, you see the land being lost. You see it carted away, and the loss of land is just so graphic. And then added to this, that once the quarry was occupied by the community in Tyendinaga, and that people had been there for I think about a week, and Sue can correct me if I'm wrong, that they were that they discovered that not only had this land that the courts had recognized was Mohawk land, but that it had actually been used as a dump. And this large toxic deposit, which is also very powerful to see, that you have this huge hole where the good land used to be that had been carted off. And then you have all of this junk, crushed up asphalt, and all kinds of toxic material filling up the margins of this large hole. So this is what happens when nothing happens. When we hear, nothing's happening, it's sort of stalemated, no news. Well, it's actually never true that nothing's happening. Something is always happening. And this loss of ground is extremely graphic, and I think that Shawn's ability to articulate this phenomenon and to turn this one rather small mine into a national metaphor is precisely what makes him dangerous. And I think there's something else that makes Shawn dangerous, which is that he isn't only a powerful leader in his own community, he also is a leader in non-Native communities. He is challenging non-Native Canadians to no longer delegate the demand for justice for First Nations people in this country